Okay, can everyone hear me? Awesome. Well, good afternoon, evening, whatever we're calling it these days. I am Lauren Babb. I am the chair of the California Commission on the Status of Women and Girls, and I am incredibly excited to moderate this really important conversation amongst some really illustrious leaders. So before we jump into that, I would like to do a little bit of housekeeping. First things first, we have a tight schedule today. So I will be moving us as fast as we possibly can go so that we get good information, but also out of here before service. What else do they want me to tell you guys? So there's some index cards. Do you all have index cards for questions? Can you wave them in the air? Folks from RBK staff will collect those and then bring them up, and then for the Q&A, I will read your questions off. So please make sure you get your questions in, and we will have some appropriate time for that. All right, I get to do introductions. This is always fun. So to my left, I have Miss Jessica Pinckney. She is the Executive Director of Access Reproductive Justice. It's an abortion fund. It is one of the only abortion funds in California. So can we give her a little bit of a round of applause? In the green, you all know and love your Assemblymember Bauer-Kahan. She is hosting tonight's conversation. She is authoring critical legislation for sexual and reproductive health, and we are honored that she is a champion for all things sexual and reproductive health and women's rights. Please give her a round of applause. And wow, this is my first time meeting an Attorney General. I'm a little starstruck, but we have our illustrious Attorney General Rob Bonta. He is amazing and a fearless leader for reproductive rights. I am so honored that he is our AG here in California. Please show some love for AG Bonta. And the most important person in this room, I get to say that, point of privilege, is Dr. Sarah Kennedy. She is Planned Parenthood Northern California's Chief Medical Officer and Chief Operating Officer. She is the amazing provider for the Northern California Planned Parenthood region and is doing this work day in and day out and managing staff on the ground that make it all work. So can we please show her some love? All right, well, let's get into it. The first question I have for all of you, and it's for everyone, but as we all know, everyone in this room knows with the SCOTUS draft leak, that the possibility of Roe v. Wade being overturned is very real. So my question to you is, with the possibility of Roe v. Wade being overturned, what does that decision mean for California? Anyone feel free to take the mic.
Well, first, I want to start by thanking the synagogue for hosting us here today, and to all the amazing leaders that are here to join us for this conversation. Our city leaders, I see healthcare leaders, and all of you who fight alongside us every day for the rights of every one of our constituents. So it's really fun, I have to say, to be sitting next to the Attorney General having this conversation, because I had the honor of being on the panel when he was appointed to be Attorney General and to ask him questions and to make the vote of whether we would affirm the confirmation. And one of my main questions was about what he would do in the face of this moment. And he said to us on that panel that he would stand up at every opportunity for every woman in the state of California and beyond. And we are now in this moment. And that wasn't very long ago that we had that conversation. And he's doing exactly that. And he's going up and down the state to reaffirm his commitment to access to comprehensive reproductive health care, including abortion. And I just want to say how grateful I am to you for doing that. And from then to now, and when we were colleagues in the Assembly, being a champion at that point too. So what does it mean for California? It means a lot of things. Luckily, you and the rest of California have elected leaders in both houses of the legislature, a governor, an attorney general, at every level of government who is willing to stand up for access to abortion. And so we are in a state where we are privileged to know that we can get 2/3 votes in both houses of the legislature, a governor who will sign legislation to protect abortion. Today, he announced his May revise. In it, he had serious commitment to funding reproductive health and abortion. And so we're in as good a place as we possibly could be given the realities of Roe being overturned. But you'll hear from some of my other colleagues that we're going to have a huge influx of patients. The data shows that we could expect up to a 3,000% increase in abortion patients in California. That's incredible. And so what the job is of the legislature, and that's what I'll speak to, is to protect our providers, those people who are committed to and will continue to provide abortions in the face of hostile laws out of state. And some of those abortions will be to people from those states. And so how do we ensure that they are safe as they continue to provide those abortions, which is protected under our Constitution? And so I have legislation that will protect them on the civil side, and we're making sure that we're protecting them in every way possible so they can continue the critical work of providing abortions here in California. And then shoring up our infrastructure. We know that with an influx of patients, we need to make sure that our reproductive health providers, our OBGYNs, have the bandwidth to provide care to every single Californian. And that doesn't just mean abortion. Dr. Kennedy doesn't just provide abortions, she provides cancer screenings and prenatal care. And if our OBGYNs are overwhelmed, we cannot provide comprehensive reproductive health care. And so part of what you're seeing in the budget that was proposed today, and you'll see a commitment from the legislature that follows, is ensuring that we are shoring up our infrastructure, our clinics, creating opportunities for new providers, and making sure that we are ready for what is about to hit us with the influx of patients and need here in California. Lastly, I just want to say we don't want patients to have to come here. We want them to be able to get abortions in their own neighborhoods. But in the face of that reality, we will be here to back them up. And if they show up at our doorstep, we will provide care in a culturally comprehensive and appropriate way.
And I would just add on to that. Very well said. Is it on? No? Speak a little louder. To me, this is about leadership. So California has, and you hear frequently, that California leads the nation in this, California leads the nation in that. This is actually where, what is the saying, the rubber meets the road, where we have to be leaders, not only for Californians from all over, because we have very rural Northern Californians who also struggle to get basic health care with reproductive sexual health care. But to truly step up and to be leaders for the whole country. If we are not able to meet this moment, then we will have tens of thousands of women and children and men, because abortion is not just a woman's issue, it's just a human being issue. We will have many, many, many individuals and communities that are negatively impacted for decades to come. And so for me, we have early signs of the leadership, thanks to, the people sitting on this panel, and to Governor Newsom for putting money towards this movement. But there's so much work to be done, which is why we're here, because we're going to need our communities behind us to make sure that we actually are able to enact and act as the leaders that we say that we are for the United States, because this is such a truly a turning point in history.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Good afternoon, everyone. Rob Bonta, California Attorney General. Thanks for the opportunity to be here with all of you. Thanks for coming out and participating in this town hall. Thank you to my recently former colleague, Assemblymember Bauer-Kahan, and always friend, for in inviting me and allowing me to do this with her, and for her outspoken, fierce, immovable leadership on this issue, among many others. I'm proud to be here and to be on this incredibly distinguished panel, and thankful for the leadership in this room that are doing what we do in California, standing up, fighting, voicing our values, and pushing back. And these conversations are really important for us to come together, share ideas, team up, partner, collaborate as we move forward in the face of what the leaked Dobbs draft opinion confirms, and what we suspected, but confirms that we may be on the verge of the overturning of Roe versus Wade, and that states across the nation are putting a full frontal assault and putting abortion rights under siege. And I do want to say that, and we all know this, but worth saying that at this moment, Roe versus Wade is the law of the land. We knew when we saw the oral argument that that was very unlikely to continue. Weren't sure of the full scope. The draft opinion was a draft from February. We're in May. The way the Supreme Court's inner workings work is they collaborate, they make changes, the decision evolves, but the starting point is probably the worst possible starting point you could ever see. So we'll see what we get, and we can't be unrealistic about it. We need to be clear-eyed about what we're facing. In the face of all that, California will continue to be a reproductive freedom state, period. Full stop, end of story. We're not changing. We're not just protecting the rights that we have. We are expanding them. We are expanding access to reproductive health care. We are looking, thank you. We are looking across the state, recognizing that we've had reproductive freedom, access to reproductive health care codified in state law for decades, and asking ourselves, what else can we do? Who doesn't have access to it? Who needs more resources? Who needs more support? How else can we strengthen our law? Should we have a constitutional amendment? That's being proposed right now. What laws should we be bringing forward? Assemblymember Bauer-Kahan's authoring laws, as are others, to strengthen the support for reproductive freedom in California. So we're going to continue to be who we are. And I, as the California Attorney General, will use the full force of the law and the full authority of my office to defend a woman's right to choose and access to reproductive freedom. Full stop. End of story. That's how it's going to happen. And so I wish we weren't in this situation. The trigger laws throughout the nation are going to hurt a lot of people. And it's avoidable. It doesn't have to be that way. And we're also going to be who we are when it comes to being a beacon of hope and a light to others in the nation, providing access to reproductive health care here if they can't get it in their own states, and providing resources and support to do that. So I'm proud of the leadership that's coming up, that's rising up and coming together at this moment, from the governor to all of our constitutional officers, our legislature. We're in lockstep on this. And we are fighting for all of you. We have your backs here in California. We're going to continue to fight. Thank you.
Good afternoon. As was mentioned, I'm Jessica Pinckney. I'm the Executive Director at Access Reproductive Justice. We are the only statewide abortion fund here in the state of California. I don't have a ton to add to what my illustrious colleagues have already stated, but I just want to name that Access Reproductive Justice has existed for almost 30 years and has been providing both support paying for abortion procedures and medication abortion, as well as the wraparound services, transportation, lodging, child care, food, emotional support that people need to access care. And we've existed for 30 years because that need has always existed here in California. And so I think it's really important in this moment that we are showing up in a very meaningful way, both for Californians and those who may be coming to the state to access care. And we have been and continue to be preparing for this influx of callers to our health line and patients to California. As the Assembly member stated, we anticipate up to a 3,000% increase in folks coming to California. So we're doing everything we can to prepare as an abortion fund to make sure that there are financial resources and informational resources available to anyone and everyone who needs to access care in California. And we've been really honored to work with the governor's office, to work with the California legislature to make that possible. And there are 13 bills moving through the California legislature right now that really ensure that California is truly a reproductive freedom state, that there is a diverse set of providers who can provide care in every inch of California, that we are protecting providers and patients and those who support providers and patients from being criminalized for accessing their rights or doing their jobs, ensuring that procedural support and practical support for callers and patients all across the state and those coming into the state is readily available. So I think it's really important. There's a full-fledged effort ahead of us. We've been doing this work for many months since Texas SB 8 was enacted, but we know we still have plenty of work to do, and it's going to take all of us.
So I just want to highlight one thing that Jessica really shines a light on, which is, and actually the Attorney General was with his incredible partner, Assemblymember Bonta, earlier this week, shining a light on this issue, which is really important, which is Roe v. Wade being overturned isn't going to impact people like me, women of privilege, as much as it is going to impact our low-income communities and our communities of color. And so I think it's really critical that we think deeply about those who are going to be most impacted and how we can assist them. And that is the incredible work that both Jessica's organization does by providing that funding, and also Planned Parenthood by opening their doors to every single person, no matter whether they can pay. And I think that's a really important point to highlight.
Thank you, RBK. Dr. Kennedy, the question is for you. So as we know, and many of you spoke to the influx of patients, how will this impact medical providers, and how will this affect the care that patients receive here in California?
So the 3,000% increase that we've said now a couple of times, so that number equates to between 40,000 and 1 million new patients coming into California to seek abortion services. So that is a staggering number of new patients. And so something that I am thinking about all the time and losing sleep about is how do we capacity build in a very, very short amount of time? As many of you know, Planned Parenthood, the majority of what we do, shockingly, is not abortion. So the majority, 97% of my time supervising, implementing policies, looking at making sure that our healthcare is equitable, high quality, accessible for everyone. It involves, well person exams and mammograms and cancer screenings and pap smears and infection checks and STI screenings and infertility care and prenatal care and on and on and on. It's actually not abortion. It's only about 3% of PP NorCal's patients are abortion visits. So how do we go from what is 3% of our organization of visit types to what is just a staggering number of new patients that might need our care, that we can both provide that same high quality, accessible, equitable care for patients seeking abortion, while also continuing to serve all those other services that we do to largely a poor, vulnerable population that we may be their only care provider. So that's just something that I think a lot about. There's not an easy answer. We can't on August 1 flip the switch and suddenly be able to go from 7,000 abortions to 300,000 abortions, right, as a state. We are going to have to think really carefully about capacity building, being really creative, being innovative with what we do, how we deliver healthcare, how we deliver all kinds of healthcare, so that potentially some of the services that we do in person, we will be able to move those to telehealth, opening up more space and time and provider time to be able to provide abortions. But these are the kinds of things that are weighing on all of us as clinics and health centers across the state.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. So what I'm hearing is capacity and innovation. Attorney General Bonta, what is your office doing to protect access to reproductive health care, including abortion, and how can California help other states in this fight?
Thank you. A number of questions, or a number of answers to that wonderful question. One is I think that our state legislature, our governor, are providing, modeling what it looks like to be a strong reproductive freedom state, providing a blueprint for what other states could do should they want to lean in, as we are, to protect choice, freedom, access to health care. So I think you need to look no further than what the governor and our legislature are doing. Additional things that we're doing is we, in the California Department of Justice, identified a misuse of the law by some, specifically one district attorney from Kings County, who was criminalizing pregnancy loss and prosecuting women, two women in particular, Chelsea Becker and Adora Perez, who lost their pregnancies, prosecuting them for murder under Penal Code 187. And our review of the legislative history and the clear and unambiguous language of the law makes it absolutely clear that there is no legal foundation to prosecute a woman or pregnant person for pregnancy loss. And we wrote an amicus brief in that case. And we also believe that is true in other states in the nation. So we wrote a letter to other attorneys general and let them know what we did, and we asked them to review their own penal code, and if it's being misused, to provide clarity and a legal alert to the legal community about the appropriate and inappropriate use of certain penal codes when it comes to pregnancy loss. We've also gone to the fight at the national level. We wrote the amicus brief, the lead amicus brief for attorneys general across the nation in the Dobbs case. The Dobbs case is the case where we saw the leaked opinion. And we did the same in multiple other states, including Texas, when SB 8 came out, to recommit and reaffirm the 50-year-old constitutional right that's well-settled law to an abortion, to reproductive health care. So we were involved in multiple lawsuits throughout the nation, and we also sought to reverse some of the damaging Trump regulations that he put into place, including the Title X gag rule, which prevents medical which prevents medical providers from answering questions about reproductive health care and providing referrals. Also, the separate abortion billing law, we helped get that reversed, which provided a confusing way to have a separate bill for abortion, a bill of $1, and if you didn't pay it, you could lose all access to reproductive health care. So we worked to get those reversed and helped women and pregnant persons and others across the nation. And we always think about the great things that we're doing in California, and that's really important, but we also care about all Americans and people across this nation who are under attack and are having their rights, their choice, their freedom taken away from them.
Thank you, Attorney General Bonta. And it's always nice to hear folks that are busy, right? Like busy doing the work. I think that is a breath of energy for people that do this work. To see real solutions and change really means the difference in the reproductive freedom state we want to see. So, Assemblymember Bauer-Kahan, can you tell me about the work with the Future of Abortion Council, why it was formed, what is it doing, and what role will it play in the changing landscape?
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. So Future Abortion Council, which many people up here sat on, was formed in the fall by Governor Newsom to really look at what the future of abortion looks like in the face of Roe being overturned. So when many people were surprised last week by the draft opinion, we were ready. We knew when Trump appointed that final appointee that this is where the country was going, and that we as a state couldn't do things overnight. We are a legislature. We move quickly, but not that quickly. And so we had to step up and get ready. And the Future Abortion Council was formed. Jessica was on it. Planned Parenthood was represented. There were people from the legislature, the administrative branch, all working together with people across the state who represent communities that are incredibly diverse. And advising us, really. There were two of us legislators that sat on the council, but the council's role really was to advise us what they on the ground needed from the legislature to be safe and secure to provide abortion and to really be able to capacity build and innovate in the way we're hearing today. And they set out, and in just a couple months, it was incredible, I have to say, this diverse and large council put together a very succinct report of recommendations for us as policymakers. There was recommendations for the Attorney General's office of what they needed us to do. And there were, I think, 46 recommendations, correct me if I'm wrong. And out of that came the 13 bills that we are moving as a legislature. And it really is guiding us in where we need to go as a state to be ready and prepared to provide comprehensive access to reproductive health care and protect the access to abortion. And so one of the recommendations was we needed to protect people from their information being subpoenaed and them finding out that they, from other states, that they came here and got an abortion, and then them being criminalized or penalized in their own state. So Assemblymember Bonta is carrying a bill that will protect that. Another one was making sure that our providers were not subject to civil liability under laws like SB 8 in Texas that could put fines on our providers for providing access to abortion. And so I'm carrying a bill that would deny full faith and credit in our courts to those laws. We saw, medical licensing. Currently, you can lose your medical license for violating the law of a foreign state. And so, despite the fact that we don't think our medical board would take away licenses to our abortion providers, we wanted to clarify that they cannot lose their license despite the fact that they will be violating the laws of other states by providing abortions. And so just looking across the code, across what was needed, Senator Skinner and Senator Caballero are carrying an incredible bill that the governor put the funding in today in his May revise that will provide a website that will provide good access to accurate information for people who are having to navigate our medical system for the first time because they need access to this care. We know that the anti-abortion activists will come in and try to provide false information and deceive those patients. And so we wanted to make sure there was accurate information about how to get good, culturally competent, safe care here in California. So that's a really exciting effort that's moving forward. So it really ran the gamut of everything that these incredible people who do the work every day for the women and pregnant people who need it asked us to do. And we were thrilled to get that guidance and to be in a position to move forward to make California safer and more accessible.
Thank you. And if staff have questions from the audience, would you all mind just bringing up those cards so I can start getting those ready to go? But in the meantime, Jessica, you told us a little bit about access, but can you tell us how you all are preparing for this moment and what your work will look like and how it's going to be a little bit different from here on out?
Sure. So I will say this. Access has existed since 1993, and there are over 80 abortion funds across the country who do the same or similar work to what Access does here in California. We work closely together. Right now, we're working very closely with a lot of the Texas abortion funds so that if we can help pay for someone's abortion procedure, they might be able to cover the cost of the flight or vice versa. So in a lot of ways, we are prepared for this moment, and abortion funds were really built for moments like these. We adjust to whatever the political circumstances are around us, and we are mutual aid organizations. We're community-based organizations, so we're really here to listen to what people say they need and figure out how to support them. Of course, in this moment, we're very much concerned about funding. The majority of the funds that are directed to our callers are based on individual donations. Individual donations are not necessarily the most reliable thing when you're trying to fund a vast increase in people coming to California needing financial support. So we're really thrilled to be supporting legislation that was introduced by Senators Skinner and Caballero, as the Assembly member was mentioning, that would also set up a fund for practical support. So organizations that provide practical support in the state could get funding to support people in getting plane tickets, getting bus rides, the Ubers and Lyfts to and from, etc. So a lot of what we're doing is trying to scale up what we've always done, making sure that we are properly staffed. Access Reproductive Justice is a tiny team. Our whole team is a team of 6, and 2 people operate our health line. That's anyone who calls in California looking for care here in the state, or anyone from outside the state who calls looking for care in California. 2 people. So we're really trying to make sure that we can increase our staffing for this moment so that we can adequately support people. And we're really trying to listen to our callers. Of course, since Senate Bill 8 went into effect in Texas, we've seen an increase in Texas callers. On an average year, we might support 3 or 4 Texas callers. Since September, we've supported about 25. And of course, we know many more are coming here than that. And so we're really trying to listen to their experiences. What are the barriers you're facing? What do you need to overcome these barriers? And trying our best to then do the capacity building that we're talking about here today to make it possible for them to have all of the supports that are necessary. And so again, I just reiterate, this is a group effort. We work closely with clinics to pledge funds directly to the clinics so that our callers don't have to worry about if they have all of the money together and in hand when they show up at the clinic door. We work closely with hotels that are near clinics all across the state to make sure we can get affordable rates, that they can accommodate folks who may not have an identification, that they can accommodate folks who are not actually the ones paying for their overnight stay, but we've already called ahead with our credit card information, or one of our volunteers has done that. And we're very lucky to have a huge network of volunteers across the state. We have over 500 volunteers, 50 to 75 of whom are very active, but we're working to train volunteers rapidly so that they can drive people to appointments, so that they can house people in their homes for overnight stays. And our practical support volunteers are also amazing at providing direct cash assistance to our callers. So last year alone, our practical support volunteers provided $18,000 of their own money through Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, Western Union, literally for people to have gas money, to have the money to pay for their Uber or Lyft, etc. So it's, we're really working to support our callers' needs and make sure that we have the volunteer force and the staff necessary to adequately support them, plus, of course, the financial resources.
Thank you. Okay, one more question for Attorney General Bonta, and then I will turn to audience questions. Attorney General Bonta, you spoke about the Dora Perez case. Could you tell us what your office is doing to protect people from future criminalization for loss of pregnancy?
Yes. I first want to acknowledge and thank the Future of Abortion Council, which one of its recommendations was to provide clarity around the fact that the law does not allow for criminalization of pregnancy loss. And so we got involved in the specific cases of Adora Perez and Chelsea Becker out of Kings County, but we also wanted to make sure that the world knew, the state of California, the legal community was very clear about what the law allows for and what it doesn't allow for. So we issued a legal alert that made it very clear that you cannot criminalize, you cannot prosecute someone for Penal Code 187 for murder for pregnancy loss. And the reason we did that, because in one of the cases, there was a public defender who, or a criminal defense attorney who was representing Adora Perez, that walked into a plea deal and believed that the charges were legally defensible and counseled their client into pleading to multiple years of prison time. And we wanted public defenders to know that that's not an appropriate chargeable offense. We wanted prosecutors to know that they shouldn't charge that, and we wanted police officers to know they shouldn't arrest based on that charge. So working with the Future of Abortion Council and working with our legal team, we sent that alert out so that as the chief law enforcement officer who provides insight and input on and clarification on the state of the law, we made it very clear what's possible and what's not possible going forward. And we've also made very clear that for an individual, a Californian suffering from pregnancy loss, that is very personal, that is very painful, that is very traumatic, and that person is deserving of compassion and care, not being prosecuted for murder. And we said that with our full-throated, full volume going forward. So we're going to get involved in any case. And so far, we've been very successful. Both cases, the charges have been dismissed. They've been overturned. And that's a good sign going forward for protecting other women and pregnant persons in California.
I just want to add on that I see our incredible district attorney, D.A. Becton, here in the room. And I think it really highlights the importance of these offices, right? I don't worry here in Contra Costa County that any woman will be prosecuted for pregnancy loss. And I know D.A. O'Malley in Alameda County stands up for women every single day as well. But it really highlights the importance that we have DAs here in California who have charged these pregnancy losses as crimes is just beyond the pale.
So this is a good audience question, and anyone can take it. How can cities and regions add capacity to support the needed growth? So is that money? Is that space? Is that people? Is that volunteers?
So this is a great question. We have been working based on an example that has been set in New York City, in Austin City, in Portland, and actually earlier this week in Chicago. There are a number of, many other municipalities are considering similar efforts, essentially to have dedicated budget items for abortion funding. There are draft motions that already exist for city councils or county boards of supervisors to use for advocating for this at the local level. And we have been working here in the state of California with a few, LA County as well as San Francisco County, to look at what can be done to increase support for abortion funding. The abortion funds already exist both here in California and across the country, and so instead of recreating the wheel with a new program or whatnot, there are really strong and necessary investments that can be made in already existing programs. Santa Clara County also earlier this week announced dedicated funding for Planned Parenthood Marmonte to support with the increase in patients that they are likely to see. So strongly encourage local municipalities to reach out to those of us who have been providing support or providing care for decades. We have ideas about the supports we need based on what we've heard directly from patients, and feel best equipped to provide that guidance as folks figure out what they can do in their local city or county to help us prepare for this moment.
Yeah, and I would add, I totally agree with Jessica, and I would add that from a healthcare provider perspective, that we are a fee-for-service healthcare provider, just like Kaiser, Sutter, you go to your local doctor or nurse. So we see you for a visit or a service, and then your insurance, and in the case of Planned Parenthood, it's 90% of our patients are on some sort of state-funded program, so Medi-Cal or Family Pact, or are uninsured entirely. We then get kind of that a visit reimbursement from Medi-Cal for that service. So when we think about that, that number of that 3,000% capacity increase, we don't have money right now to hire the people to see those individuals, right? Our budget right now is based off of our current patient population and our current patient visits. And so some of this is actually just money. And so I would, if you are someone who have the resources and the motivation to look, give at the organization level. So, if you're going to Access, go to Access for Planned Parenthood, go to the local affiliates. PPFA, obviously our parent kind of organization, really exclusively does education and advocacy. They're not the healthcare delivery arm. It's the affiliates on the ground. So this area is PP NorCal, my affiliate, PP Marmonte, our sister affiliate, or whatever, reproductive healthcare provider that may be near to you, or that you're from. I'm from Western Pennsylvania, and like one little struggling Planned Parenthood clinic in Western Pennsylvania that I donate to regularly. So that is extremely helpful. On a broader, zooming kind of out, which is not an immediate solution, but is so important, is that we put the right people into office, even at the local city level. So city councils make a big difference. In Walnut Creek, we have horrendous protesters now, and we have a mostly, almost exclusively supportive Walnut Creek City Council that has helped put in kind of safety precautions, thank you, to protect our patients and our staff. And so it makes a difference. We have clinics in Eureka and Redding and Chico. Those communities don't have supportive city councils, like we are so lucky to have here in Lafayette and here in Walnut Creek. But so that makes a difference to vote and to get even at these local, the school boards make a difference, right? School boards make a difference about, are we going to teach accurate, medically accurate information to our kids so that they keep themselves safe, that they can talk about sex, that they know body parts and anatomy, and they're not learning just from their buddies in the locker room, right? So all of that is extremely important.
Thank you. Okay, this is again a question for everyone. Some people believe abortion care is only an issue for women. Why is this an issue important to everyone and not just women?
I would love to start with this one. I think this is like the analogy of being like in the early days of COVID, where we all just didn't really care because we're like, oh, it's just like China's problem. Like there's something happening in China, but it's not going to be our problem. And like 2 years later, we're all wearing masks, and this is clearly the pandemic has had such terrible consequences on the world. So, of course, this is not just a problem for women. It affects families and communities, and it largely affects families and communities of color, people who are low income, people who are already suffering from violence and trauma in their lives. And, the patients that I see who are seeking abortion, and this is backed up by many years of evidence, kind of your most typical patient, if there can be such a thing, is a younger woman with some education who already has at least one child. And when they are in front of me and they are saying, yeah, I'm sure about this decision, and I'm sure because I want to be able to take care of my 3-year-old at home. I don't have enough money to bring another child into this world, or my partner is hurting me and I don't want him to hurt this next baby. Like this is a whole family and whole community issue, and it is just healthcare. It is healthcare. So when we have communities suffering in Wyoming because abortion is a trigger law state, that eventually hurts all of Americans, right? And that's why I go back to COVID. Like what happens across the globe actually hurts us in America. What happens in Iowa or in Texas or in Nebraska hurts Californians ultimately, and hurts the people that we're trying to take care of.
I could not agree more with everything that was just said. The other thing I would note is we support callers every day on our Healthline who do not identify as women. There are transgender and gender non-binary folks all across this country who need support with abortion all day, every day, who are already facing barriers in accessing quality health care. So I think it's also really important to understand that this isn't an issue that just impacts people who identify as women. And as someone who is literally 4.5 months pregnant right now, I did not get 4.5 months pregnant on my own. It certainly is a family issue. You make decisions about when and how to build your family. With your partner, with your community, with your other family members. And so we all have a stake. We all have a stake in this conversation.
No worries. And the last audience question that we'll have time for is, Walnut Creek recently enacted an ordinance for a buffer zone to keep protesters away from the health center that Dr. Kennedy was just talking about. Does anyone want to provide an overview of state law that relates to keeping patients safe at health centers?
My partner-in-law here next to me. But last year I carried a bill with, actually Planned Parenthood was our sponsor, that strengthened our state laws around protecting our providers and our patients that are going into clinics. And I know that we have patient escorts here in our room with us who every day see what is happening to people who are really just trying to access health care. And the fact that they are terrorized when trying to access the health care that they need is beyond the pale. And so we updated those laws. There were some ways in which they just needed to be updated for the 2020s. They didn't relate to the terrorization that was happening online, for example, because that wasn't happening when the bill was originally passed in the 90s. But we also extended out the buffer zone, demanding sort of a further extension of the protections for our patients and our providers and those who support them here in California. We also included that training for law enforcement to make sure that they understand. One of the issues we have in many of our communities is that when this is happening and law enforcement is called, nobody shows up. And so making sure that law enforcement understood what was happening and what their role in this is to protect patients who are accessing health care. And in moving that bill through the legislature, which I'm pretty sure that my former colleague had the opportunity to support before he became Attorney General, I actually went and sought out support from my Republican colleagues because I believed that they are people who believe in the safety and security of our community and who believe that when one is just going to see their doctor, they should be safe and secure. I didn't get any of those votes. But I think this is really an issue that should be nonpartisan. No matter where you are or what you're doing, you have a right to dignity, safety, and security, and that is not what is happening at the doorsteps of our reproductive health clinics. And so I really want to echo the sentiments of Dr. Kennedy in applauding Walnut Creek for passing that buffer zone and doing so unanimously. I think it is just such a testament to the incredible community and their willingness to stand up for the people who are getting health care in their community. And our providers who do show up every day and walk through those doors and take it on and know that they may be harassed, but are willing to do it because they know that every one of those patients deserves the health care that they are seeking and need it. And then law enforcement, our top cop sitting next to me, takes it over from there. So I don't know if you want to add anything.
I'll just add that my new role after being in the California State Legislature for almost 9 years, where I was working with my colleagues to create laws that lifted people up and abolish laws that hurt people, is now to defend and protect and ensure the implementation of the existing laws. So I don't create laws anymore, but the legislature has given me and the governor have given me a lot to work with in terms of a great set of laws that protect our fundamental values, including access to healthcare, access to reproductive healthcare. So I'm very happy to and committed to defending our laws that provide safe zones for accessing reproductive healthcare, free of coercion, free of harassment, free of intimidation, and to make sure that we provide the best legal defense to those laws if and when they're challenged. But thankful for the legislature for having the vision and the foresight to provide those safe zones so that those who need it can access healthcare safely.
Thank you. All right, so we're almost at a close here. So what we'll do is I'll give you all sort of 2 minutes to answer this question for all of you. What can Californians do, and how can they support your work?
I guess we're starting on this end. If Californians are interested in getting directly involved, volunteer at your local clinic. They need clinic escorts, they need patient escorts, they need people at the door to welcome people in, make them feel warm and safe. Volunteer with your local abortion fund, which in California is Access Reproductive Justice. You can drive people to appointments. You can house them on your spare couch or your bedroom, your guest bedroom. You can provide financial support. And I would... my personal hype woman. You can find more information about how to volunteer with Access at accessrj.org. I also strongly encourage people to donate. I know it's a lot of conversation about money, but when we say $5 or $10 makes a difference, that's sometimes an Uber ride for someone to their appointment. And it really does make a difference. So if you're able to donate to Access Reproductive Justice, accessrj.org, to your local Planned Parenthood, there are also many independent clinics all across the state. So, finding out about your local independent clinics, which are also often under-resourced, is highly important. And the last thing I would say is just say abortion. Help us reduce the stigma around something that is basic health care. I think I said this recently. I literally say abortion more than I say my partner's name. It's just the way it is, because it's common. It's common discussion in my household, in my life, and in my community, and that's what it needs to look like everywhere, because it is no different than going to the doctor for a checkup, to have an x-ray done, etc. It's basic health care. Everyone deserves the right to access it. And if we are unafraid and unabashed to talk about abortion, we'll do the work necessary to destigmatize the topic.
Can I just start by saying how lucky we are to have these people in our community? They dedicate every moment of their lives to providing this incredible healthcare to people, and I'm so grateful. So I would say show up. I see our folks from Women's March Contra Costa here in the audience who give us an opportunity to show up every time we need to, and vote. I mean, you heard Dr. Kennedy talking about it, but it matters. It matters who represents you at every level of government, and we need to do what the anti-abortion folks have been doing for decades and ask every single person that we vote for, where do you stand on abortion? And if they don't share our values, they don't get our vote. Full stop. It is high time. It is high time that we have people who respect women and pregnant persons' right to control their own body. And if you don't agree with that, you don't have a place in government. So that's what I would say about that. And then I have to say, Jessica and I were on a panel earlier this week, and we had a very angry person in the audience who felt like we weren't doing enough. And this was a panel of people. We had an abortion provider who's trying to provide abortions to every single person he can find in the country. We have Jessica who spends all day trying to support people getting abortions. I spend all day legislating about abortion. And what I said to him was, look, in 2017, I felt like the country was going in the wrong direction. So I ran for office, and I put myself in the position to make laws that would make a difference today. Now, not everyone is going to run for office or run for the assembly, I get that, but ask yourself that question I asked myself in 2017. What can I do to change the trajectory this country is on? Figure out what that answer is, go one step further, and do it. Because if we all do that, if we all do what's in our power to change, we will bend the arc back towards justice. But it's going to take all of us.
Thank you, RBK. I think that's a great way to wrap up because I know that there's a service behind it. Oh, sorry, I keep doing that to you. Go for it.
I'm really bad at rules.
So let me just echo some of the important things that were being said and maybe put an emphasis on certain components. I think at a time like this, it's really important for us to rise up together and add our voices to a collective voice. Go to rallies, go to protests, go to demonstrations, support one another, show that the community, and join the community in lifting up our voice and making our values clear. When the draft opinion was first released, people weren't sure what to do. They were nervous, they were scared, and so they gathered together. And it was a beautiful thing. I joined with some of them, and so did Assemblymember Bauer-Kahan in San Francisco. And people wanted to know that there were others who supported them, who cared, who would fight with them, who were going to protect the right to an abortion, to choice, to freedom, to health care. So it's important in times like these that we come together collectively. I'll also say there are critical groups that when no one was looking have been doing this work for years and years. And they are deserving of our support, of our resources, of our donations, Planned Parenthood, Access, others. There are many out there who you can support if you're looking to take action. And then, finally, I'm a deep believer in the democratic process. And we need to elect folks at every level. And some people will say, why does it matter? We don't need to elect a city council member who's pro-choice because they're a city council member. They're not making decisions on this. No, that's wrong. Everyone has a role in this. Everyone has something that they can do, bad or good, on this issue. And where folks start isn't necessarily where they end. And they can make more damaging decisions later as they take on other positions. So it should be a hard stop. It should be a litmus test that you be pro-choice, that you protect reproductive freedom, that you protect the right to an abortion. And we have a very blue state with lots of leaders who do that. So we need to play the long game, the big game on the national platform as well. And think in my very blue Assembly district and very blue California, people are asking me all the time, how can we impact what's happening in DC? I have a great Congress member, I have great senators, I have a great governor. What else can we do? We need to adopt Democrats outside of California who can turn the majorities in state legislatures and in Congress. We need to remove the filibuster. It's undemocratic. It's not in the Constitution. And we need to support folks that can help make those key decisions so that we're not faced with a Senate that is confirming a Republican president's appointees and packing the court and then us receiving this damage. They played the judicial packing game just relentlessly and ruthlessly well. It was without value. It's pure exercise of power, but they did it. And now we're in this position. And we need to be more aggressive and more firm in the way we do our politics. We lead with values, we lead with compassion, humanity, and care. And we need to be more aggressive, consistent with those values to get results, because this place that we're in right now is painful. People are going to get hurt. And we can change it if we act and exercise our democratic authority. Thank you.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yeah, Attorney General Bonta totally stole my zoom out for the national scene. I so wholeheartedly agree, because I think that abortion, like COVID, is totally reveals the inequities that exist in our country that are so severe and so much worse than really anywhere else in the world. It just doesn't exist. And the reason it doesn't exist is because we have forever resisted kind of universal healthcare, universal education, a safety net for all people. So I see these as all being very, very linked, and the solution is what Attorney General Bonta talked about, which is that we have to play the long game. We have to engage in local, statewide, and national politics, and we need to be able to change the momentum of this country, because the divide is getting worse, and the people who are most hurt by this kind of harmful ruling by the Supreme Court are going to be, again, the poorest, the most vulnerable, people who are already so marginalized from our communities. So I really want to thank you on behalf of PP NorCal, because the fact that you all are here, you are doing something, you are showing up, you are supporting us in that work. And I'm just very grateful for that, because we're really going to need it in the coming months and years. So thank you so much.
Thank you all. I'm going to wrap us up super quick. I'm going to say thank you all for speaking truth to power in this moment. It matters to the world. Thank you, Assemblymember Bauer-Kahan. Thank you, Attorney General Bonta. Thank you, Jessica Pinckney. Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Thanks for joining this panel.